Hey gang, welcome to the Gill Athletics Connections podcast, the show that brings you the men and women of track and field and explores their unique stories. The show is brought to you by Gill Athletics. Head on over to gillathletics.com to find all your track and field equipment needs. Really head over to Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter and check out Gill Athletics. We're running a cool same team promotion. We in this tough time where we're all separated and scattered, we believe that we're on your team and you are on our team. So we'd like to honor you with a commemorative baton. And all you got to do is head over to our social media, follow us. I think you have to do a retweet with hashtag same team, and that's all you got to do. We'll send you out a baton and just say thanks for being on our team. I'm your host, Mike Cunningham, National Sales Manager for Gill Athletics, and this week our guest is Bryan Fetzer. Bryan is a coach of 23 years. He's been all around. You'll hear a quick bio on him, but today we're going to focus on his transition to the non-track and field world and how that transition is going and what skills he learned as a track coach for 20 plus years, how that's translating into the business world. So, hey, let's get done. You're tired of my voice. Let's get over to our guests. So without further ado, please help me welcome the wise, the wonderful Bryan Fetzer. Hey, Bryan.
Yes, sir.
Hey, man. How are you today?
I am amazing.
Oh, well, that's awesome. I love that. We're starting off positive right from the get-go. That's awesome, man. I don't expect anything less from you, so that works.
Hey, I'm a very blessed individual. What can I say?
Well, hey, thanks for joining today on the Gill Athletics Connections podcast. Got a really interesting story interview here today with Bryan Fetzer. As I have gone through my career as a college track and field coach and now working in the business side of track and field at Gill Athletics, I routinely get questioned from coaches about what's life like outside of coaching. How did you transition? Why did you transition, etc.? And so I've got an amazing guest for you today. I've got a guy who, if you think I had a coaching career, this guy puts me to shame. Bryan Fetzer is a longtime coach on the college ranks and is now transitioning to, I don't want to call it the real world, but the other world.
Yeah. Different world.
The different world. That was a good show back in the day. So
it was a good show.
Bryan, why don't we start out? Why don't you give us the 30,000 feet, maybe 2-minute bio for people who don't know your coaching background and where you coached and the kind of the positions you held.
Worked hard, really blessed. The end. No. No. I coached 23 years at the college level. Coached football at a junior college, started off there, played football in college. I thought that was my career path, was to be a college football coach, and things got shifted to a different route, and spent 23 years coaching college track and field. I was at Cal, Mississippi State, Ball State. I was the head coach at Gardner-Webb. It was at Ranger Junior College as a head coach. And then the last 2 stops were Harvard as an assistant. And then my last 8 years, I was the director of track and field cross country at the University of Virginia. So definitely all over the place, crisscross the country. Never in a million years would I've ever thought I would be coaching college track and field. And had the opportunity to travel around the world and be on some U.S. staffs and some other staffs from other countries, and really see the globe and meet people from all walks of life and all places, and have some amazing athletes, not just from a national championship standpoint, but just amazing people. I have some that are in the front lines of this crazy pandemic that we're going through right now as doctors and hospitals in New York City and other places. So it's, coaching is a situation that you can never take too lightly, because it's the impact that the goal is at least to have the impact on individuals, whether it's your athletes or other coaches or administrators or parents or whatever. So I was super fortunate, and went through 23 years of it, and in July, it was time for a new chapter in the book of life.
Well, two things that you said right there. One is 23 years, Fetz. That just makes me feel old, to be honest with you. You've been in the game for 23 years. And number two, and this goes out to every track coach, teacher that is listening to this right now. Bryan said something really interesting there about having former athletes that are on the front line of what we're going through today. If you have the ability, and through its text message, Facebook, whatever, Instagram, reach out to those people and just say thank you. They are on the front lines right now. So that was just something that made me think about that when you said that, Fetz, that, we owe these people who are doctors and nurses, and they're just, boy, God bless them. I tell you what, I couldn't do it. So just a quick shout out to all those former athletes of ours
absolutely.
out
there. I think a lot of people during this time are realizing the occupations that are actually important. Sometimes in sports, since we are in entertainment, essentially, we feel our self-worth as a celebrity or whatever you want to call it, a public figure, probably a little bit too much. And I think one of the things that people are starting to realize is, teachers and doctors and firemen and custodians and people that work in the service industry, people working in those factories, how important they are in our daily lives. And we just take it for granted. I know that's the one thing that I've kind of realized over the last, couple of weeks, the small things that you appreciate a little bit more.
Yeah, it does.
Not to go that route, but
well, it does put things in perspective, and I think we could always use that kind of a splash of cold water in the face and give us some perspective on life out there for sure. So, Bryan, 23 years through a really myriad of different types of programs, from junior colleges to the quote unquote small schools. Up into the the Harvard, super, and Cal-Berkeley's, high educations, to the Power Fives, Mississippi States, and then as a head coach of one of those Power Five schools at the University of Virginia. So you've got perspective, you've got a lot of insight here. You are now transitioning out of track and field coaching as a profession. Why don't you tell us what you're up to nowadays, and then we'll get into what translates from coaching to the business world.
Well, I was joking with a friend the other day, and I said I'm still trying to figure out what to do when I grow up. But no, I am a part owner of a nutrition supplement company called Iron Faith Nutrition that I bought into 3 years ago. Even while I was still coaching, we kind of started, and I kind of led the transition into doing a lot of the day-to-day management of it. From a standpoint of just creativity and thoughts and how do we grow the business. My business partner, Eric Vito, and I have known each other for 20 years and kind of bought a company and rebranded it. So that's taken up a lot of time. Since July, I've been very involved with Paul Doyle. People that know in track and field, where Paul runs DMG, Doyle Management Group, and been working with a group called World's Greatest Team. And we've actually started a series of podcasts, or Instagram live casts and stuff like that, trying to interview Olympians in track and field. We're getting ready to go into swimming and some other sports as well. Just kind of having coffee. We call it Just a Cup. Just having, 15, 20, 25-minute conversation about their lives and how this has impacted the Olympics. What did they do in training wise? Just trying to get a little bit better insight on them. And we actually have some really cool things that I probably can't talk about yet coming down the pipe, but you can follow World's Greatest. There's some incredible stuff that we're getting ready to launch, and doing a lot of consulting. When I say consulting, I'm working with a group in India, currently working with a group in New Zealand on some leadership and some organizational structure stuff. Which has been fun, helping on a couple academies, sport academies, develop, I don't want to say curriculums, but training protocols. How do they integrate things? How do they come up with their facilities? How do they develop their facilities? I've really kind of realized towards the end of my career, that's what I really like to do. I like to manage things, to build things. more so than the actual hand-to-hand coaching, hands-on coaching kind of stuff. So it's kind of transitioned well into that, and it's been very interesting. I never thought I would ever be having conversations with venture capitalists or sitting down having meetings with vice president of Bank of America or anything like that, like things that I've done in the last couple months.
So
it's definitely a transition.
You mentioned three buckets there: the Iron Faith Nutrition, the Paul Doyle Instagram work, and then that last part, these consultations. Let's work backwards.
Okay.
With these consultations with in different countries, are these more track coaching consultation, like how to set up their training programs for their athletes in their country, or more about leadership development and coaching development?
No, really none of those really have anything to do with track and field. They not really hardly any of them track and field. It's more how to put together like an academy, a training system, how to put a weight room in, how do you design a facility for performance development. I would probably say it's more along the high performance realm of things than it is necessarily track and field. A lot of it's soccer, or as I've been so used to calling it now, football, because everybody in the world calls it football.
Right.
And it's always like kind of a shift back and forth, but it's really doing those kind of programs. Dealing with a group called eCoach, which is amazing. We're trying to set up some virtual coaching for athletes in different sports and kind of bring things closer to it. And we're doing some stuff. We were doing a lot of stuff in China, but now it's in India really and some other places. So it's that kind of realm. If you would have said to me like a year ago, hey, somebody's going to actually value your opinion on something that you never did, I'd be like, what? I don't know anything about soccer. I like Liverpool. I'm a big fan. But it's more along the lines of setting up programs. And as a college, I never really appreciated as much now or before as I do now. And what people say is, being a director of track and field at the major college level, I mean, you're essentially an athletic director. I mean, you've got 6 sports. You have 100 plus athletes. We have between our full-time staff, our support staff, different people that worked quote unquote under me, where I supervised was probably about 20 or so at Virginia. You're running a small business. I'm a multi-million-dollar business. And, you get that skill set of kind of managing things. And as a track and field coach as well, I mean, we're putting on meets. And when we developed the Virginia Challenge, our staff is the one that did it. I mean, it wasn't me. Our staff and our support staff put it together. But, you're running a major, competition with, 60, 70 schools, thousands of athletes, thousands of fans. So you kind of develop this, I guess, niche, or you kind of develop, a skill set that is very business related. And I think college coaches, especially track and field coaches, because it's a unique sport, undercut themselves a little bit in the fact that, they develop skills that people in the business world, are enamored by. Because you're running businesses.
So what part of coaching, and maybe you answered it, but maybe repackage here a little bit, what part of the coaching helped you with this consulting side? Because you mentioned your opinion now is someone has value, someone's paying for it to talk about how to put together a weight room, how to coach international soccer, football. I'm the Americans, I just call it soccer.
Right.
What part of coaching through your 23 years was maybe the most applicable to being able to provide that value now after coaching track and field?
I don't necessarily think there's one thing. I think it's the way the sport is set up. And what I mean by that is, you're recruiting. So you're getting the sales kind of component in it. You have to organize practices. You have to be very organized. You're developing leadership. Whether you think you are or you're not, within your own event groups, you're developing some sort of leadership. You're learning how to work in a system. It might be your system as the head coach, but then ultimately it's also the athletic department system. So you're kind of functioning within an organizational model, and you're doing all those things, and you're always learning. You're going out. I think I saw Mario Wilson a couple weeks ago, or maybe who knows, time kind of all runs together. But,
yeah,
but
right.
I saw a kind of a Facebook or Instagram thing, and Mario was on with Derek Yesh from Alabama, and maybe a couple other coaches. Those are the two that kind of stuck in my head. They were just kind of talking shop, and you do that so much as a coach, and you take little points. People I worked for, there's things that I took that I was like, hey, I'm definitely doing that if I ever get the opportunity to run my own program. And then there's also things I said, there's no way I'm ever going to let that happen if I do. It's the good and bad, and you learn things. And I would hope really that people that worked for me could do the same thing and say, hey, I would never do what he did with that. But I would love to do this. Because it's crafting things the way you want. And what
it's
fits
interesting.
Your personality.
You mentioned Derek and Mario specifically. In a couple of episodes ago, we interviewed Marissa Chu, who started this coaches collab group on Facebook. And
awesome.
It's interesting. So I was just talking to her last night on Messenger, because when we interviewed 6 days ago, there were 1,800 members, and now there's like 21 or 2,200 or something, like
That's
300
awesome.
or 400. It's just growing. And I was like, it's awesome. And she goes, yeah, I don't know what's going on here. And my reply was a movement. Like there was a need, a vacuum for this camaraderie of coaches that outside of just the 1 week we go to convention, or just the one weekend that we are at a track meet and we get a couple of minutes between events, there's a real need there. So it's filling that void. And, I look at someone like Marissa Chu, who's running that group, and I'm like, oh man, I would hire her in a heartbeat to run a group for us in the business world in a heartbeat. And before we now let's transition over to Paul and World's Greatest. But before we do that, I can't go a step further, since we mentioned leadership, and you and I have had talks about the importance of leadership, not only in the track and field world, but in the different world, as we said earlier. We have a common friend. You introduced me to him, so I owe everything to you, Mr. Todd Gonger, author of just my favorite book in the whole world. I've mentioned it before on the podcast. If there's ever an opportunity for me to plug this book, it is that important to me, so I will. You need to go right now and look for a book called Lead for God's Sake. Author is Todd Gonger. He's a basketball guy by sport, but he speaks volumes on leadership and faith and business and sport. I mean, I can't think of, you help me here, Bryan. I can't think of a single person, whether you're a track coach, an athlete, a basketball coach, a business person, a retired mom, a dad, I don't care. I can't think of a single person that book would not benefit them.
Oh, there's no question. Todd has been such a key person in my life. In the last 5 or 6 years, you think you understand certain things, and you think you're heading down the right path, and the Lord kind of humbles you sometimes and kind of puts somebody in your path that kind of corrects some things and kind of leads you in a different direction. And Todd really has done that. I read the book twice. I read the book when he first came and talked. Craig Littlepage, the athletic director at the time in Virginia, brought him in to speak to all the head coaches just on leadership development. And he'd already been doing some stuff with Urban Meyer, football coach at Ohio State and Florida and such. And he came in and he spoke and read the book. Michael Guthrie, a good friend of mine, really kind of pushed it. And Mike's not in sport. He's a CEO of a real estate company. And, he kind of, pushed me towards that. And I read it, and it kind of hit me a little bit, and kind of maybe do some, inner, thought of, am I doing this right? And then my last year at Virginia, I brought Todd in and spoke to our team and read the book a second time, and really hit me, and knew that I needed to change some things that I did. And I think it helped. It definitely changed my thought process and all that stuff, because it's more leading with the heart than opposed to leading with whatever. And athletes, I know athletes in my past, I probably hadn't handled certain situations in the right way. I probably was a little, authoritative, I guess you could say, maybe, where you're disciplined or you're hard, or, I'm hard by nature because that's why, my parents were on me. They were tough on me, and I think it helps. But, but the key point of the whole book is to let people know where your heart is and what's important to you, and that you actually care for them. And, I think as a coach, that's something that, we really need to do in general. And to be honest, with that book, we're actually working right now, Todd is, and we're kind of working on putting together a docu-series, interviewing some coaches. That's hopefully going to be, this thing kind of pushed it back a little bit, but hopefully in the next year, a docu-series interviewing a bunch of different coaches in different sports will be out, on the book Lead for God's Sake. And I know there's movie discussions and stuff about that too down the road, but
it'd make a great movie. Well, that warms my heart because I the reason I plug it anytime I can and recommend it anytime I can is because I received so much value. I therefore feel like I owe Todd.
Right.
Literally, it's like, man, if I can give him just one more book sale, and then for the person who I recommend it to, it's like you are going to receive. So I care about you so much. I want to receive the value that I did. So that's awesome, man. I love that. So you mentioned working with Paul Doyle in worldsgreatest.team and the podcast Instagram Live that you're doing. I love that you call it Just a Cup. It makes me think of the time you and I were at that coffee shop in Charlottesville.
Yep.
Over just a cup of coffee.
Yep.
One of my just greatest memories. So talk to us about what you've done with Paul, because I know you've done some other things with some announcing and stuff like that.
Sure. Well, we've got the American Track League. It's a series of street meets that we're doing, trying to give people. I really believe track and field is a unique sport. Definitely, I've fallen in love with it for sure, and I think we do really. And we started a track, the American Track League. I kind of helped him out over the years of it's trying to give people that a little different perspective. And the way I describe it, I was describing it to a city sports commission a few weeks ago. And I said, the track and field's got distance running, it's got sprinting, it's got throwing, it's got pole vaulting. It's got, jumping. It has so many different aspects to it, but we try to cram it all in. And if you look at the makeup of who likes track and field, most people don't like everything. They like something. And, it'd be like saying, hey, we're going to have a baseball game being played, and out in left field, we're going to put a basketball hoop, and we're going to have people play, horse out there. And at the same time, we're going to put a goal over on the right field line, and we're going to have a soccer match. And then behind home plate, we're going to have a boxing, competition going on. Hey, go ahead, watch everything. Well, that's what track and field is. We're trying to make people watch all these different things that they really don't care about. And the meets are so long and they're boring. I will never go sit in the stands and go watch a regular track meet ever again the rest of my life. It's a waste of it's too much. Just nonsense. I'll go watch bits and pieces of things, but I couldn't do a 6-hour, 5-hour thing. And if we really want to reach more people, we have things that people are enamored with. And, doing something like this, having a street meet, having a pole vault in the street, people love that. I think it's crazy. And, we're going to do some shot put. We're going to add a mile to competitions. I mean, we're actually even talking with the MLS and some minor league baseball teams right now of doing things in conjunction with them. Running them out at halftime of an MLS match. I mean, those kind of things are, innovative and stuff. And that's one of the things that we're doing, that I'm doing with Paul. And then worldsgreatest.team is a company that he, we kind of all formed that is for Olympians. It's for Olympians. It's trying to give them content, branding content, social media content, different programming content. Bob, the CEO, is an amazing guy and has a brilliant mindset for it. Has worked in the sports industry, ESPN, a bunch of places, a lot. And just trying to do some different things. And this Just a Cup kind of came about of just trying to give them a platform. Their story. Justin Knight had him on a couple of days ago, and Justin was great. Just talking, having fun. We got Grant Holloway, we've got Devin Allen, we've got a bunch of people coming down the pipe that are some of the better athletes track and field wise in the country, but we're also going to start adding swimmers and volleyball players to it, and some soccer players and some football players. And we're going to even add some coaches. So
that seems like really interesting. It seems like a lot of people would want to see these. Where can people, or can you view past archives, or do they need to catch them live? And if so, where do they need to be following?
Well, we're kind of doing this organically, and I kind of laugh because we're trying to figure out how to do it. We finally archived Justin Knight's. We're going to be archiving all of them going forward. You can World's Greatest Team on Instagram is one site you can see them at. World's Greatest .team is the website per se, and then my Instagram at Coach Fetz. We're going to have them up there, and I think we're trying to put them on Instagram TV and such. It's going to keep growing. We literally try to do one every day, and sometimes two a day. And we've got people from Great Britain. We got people from France coming up, and we're going to add coaches to it. We're going to add some others. We're going to talk about leadership a little bit with coaches.
So if I'm following,
but it's going to be very short.
If I'm following along on Instagram at World's Greatest Team, I'll get notified when you go live to do the next. Just a cup. Yeah. Okay. And be careful.
We're trying to do those about lunchtime.
And be careful doing too many in one day, because you don't need that much coffee. You, Bryan Fetzer, need just one cup, my man. You don't need to be throwing gas on that the energy that you have.
that is true. I've actually been drinking some lemon and hot ginger, lemon, and honey, so my throat as I keep as I'm on the phone a lot. But I'm a 1 cup a day guy.
Good. Yeah. As the host of the Gill Athletics Connections podcast, it's the same thing. It's not, caveat here, not the hardest job in the world to be the host of the podcast. But you're right. You talk, and you got to be thinking. It's not the easiest to do a podcast and interviewing people as well. You got to make sure you are on point at all time.
Absolutely.
That's the extent of my humble brag. There is I get the joy of being able to be the host of this podcast. Hey, we have a few minutes left, so now let's transition to that part of you're a co-owner at Iron Faith Fitness. This seems more as a coach who's maybe thinking about transitioning out of collegiate track and field coaching, more of what they would be thinking of. Okay, a job, a business and things like that. So maybe tell us. And I know you speaking of business, you've got a meeting coming up, so we've got to.
I do have a meeting I had to get to. Yeah. But no, Iron Faith Nutrition is, and that's what it is. It's Iron Faith Nutrition is what it's called. It's, I'm passionate about the body, and it definitely has taught me how little I knew about business, and has definitely been humbling in failure a little bit. I have a great business partner, Eric Fijo, whose family was in the nutrition business for years and years, and he works for another company, but we co-own it together, and it's interesting, kind of maneuvering. I think big on everything, and we're not necessarily a sports per se nutrition company. We've got one product that's has anti-inflammatory properties to it that is getting ready to get certified. Athletes can start taking, which is great, curcumazyme. But we're dealing with scientists. I've learned so much. It's been interesting talking to them about. These are, herbologists, and different people that deal with herbs and deal with, different, bio, nutritional components of things, and man, learning things from them. I feel like I'm getting a master's degree when I get done talking to them.
Oh, I bet.
Putting formulas together and such.
Yeah.
And it's a healing. It's fun. It's exciting. But it's definitely, it's been an education.
That leads me to this question. You said there were a lot of things you realized you didn't know about business, but as the CEO of University of Virginia track and field, you did learn about business. What things did you learn in track and field as the entire program that translated into this new business role?
Well, I definitely think understanding how important marketing is was massively. And marketing from a social media standpoint, how marketing has shifted over the years from, print ads to digital and social media. I think that's probably the biggest thing. And, everything's going e-commerce wise in that realm. So really learning that, but, dealing with accountants. I mean, I handle my own budget, but, at Virginia, but oh my goodness, like, purchasing stuff. And this, you're purchasing things, 6, 10, 12 months in advance. That's crazy, kind of forecasting those things. But dealing with people and dealing with customers is a lot recruiting, but it's also kind of coaching because they're asking you questions. And if you're really invested in what you're doing, you're going to try to give them the best answers possible. And, I kind of laugh if they ever get me on the phone, I'm horrible because I just give people stuff. And the other people that work with us are like, man, you just can't give it away. I'm like, they sounded like they needed it. So they're like, oh my gosh, I'm like, you're the worst salesman ever. I'm like, I know, I'm not very good at it. My heart tugs for things.
I was about to say, I'm taking you off my list of potential hires at Gill now.
Oh my gosh, no. I just gave some lady a ton of stuff when I answered the phone the other day, and they just kind of look at me like, really? But no, I think you learn a lot. If somebody wants to transition out, I felt at the time, when I decided, it was something that had weighed in my heart for a little while about when it was time to end and to go to a new path. And I'm a Christian, I'm a believer, and I just felt the Lord was leading me out of coaching. That he said, hey, your time's passed. I want you to do unto this now. And, is it tough? I miss the people. I miss staff meetings. I miss, walking down the hall. I miss, going to have coffee with Tony Bennett. I miss, Joe, our softball coach at Virginia. I miss hanging out with those people. But, and I miss the kids. I say kids, they're grown adults now.
Right.
But I miss the interactions. I miss going and having coffee with them. And that was probably the biggest thing. I guess wrapping up or whatever. Pete Watson, he was one of my assistant coaches, a head men's cross country coach at the time. He's at Texas now. And Pete started meeting with the guys at a coffee shop. And he kind of encouraged me to start doing that too, to kind of build a better relationship with the kids on the team but I didn't directly coach. And man, when I started doing that, it was unbelievable. You just get to know them. You get to see them in a different light. You're out of your office, you're away, you're doing something different. Now, not all of them drank coffee. Someone would have smoothies or have tea, or someone just would sit there and we would just, 15, 20 minutes, kind of like this Just a Cup scenario is with the podcast, and you just invest in their lives, find out what they're doing.
That's a great lesson to end right there, because we always talk about how do we make our athletes better in our programs, and we initially start talking about, well, if you work on the penultimate step, if you increase your and it's like, oh, wait a minute, if you just invest in your people, which are your athletes, that actually can have an exponential growth. So last question.
Yep.
You got a lot of irons in the fire. Are we closing the book? Are we ever going to see a coach college track and field again? Or
no?
Well, that was quick. There it is. That's the answer.
No, I'm definitely done coaching college track and field. I guess I shouldn't say never, because if that's what I'm called to do, I do it. But I don't see it. I don't have. I think I'm better served in other disciplines now. I definitely, there's a lot of things that I would alter a little bit, and how probably I dealt with people, and how I think I did things better towards the end than I did towards the beginning. But I think that's part of life. You learn, you grow.
Yeah.
And I think you, as a coach, you should never, ever be afraid to make a change.
That's awesome.
Whether it's a job-wise or personality-wise, it's never too late. And I mean, I've seen plenty of coaches do it over their career, and it's encouraging and enlightening. And I think, you doing this podcast right now, I think is an awesome thing, because it's giving coaches a chance to share and kind of open up a little bit and say things that maybe they wouldn't say to somebody directly, but it could stimulate a conversation, as I call them, those fence conversations that you have at track meets or wherever down the road. And I think it's awesome. I appreciate you doing this. I appreciate you having me on. I feel pretty humbled that you asked me to do it, to be honest.
Well, I appreciate those kind words, man. That positivity it hits right at me. So thank you so much. So the number one thing I've learned in business, Fetz, is don't be late. And you're late. Go talk to Paul. Give him our best.
That is true.
And we'll talk soon. Thanks for joining us.
All right, brother. Have a good.
Well, so I'm pretty sure I made him late for his meeting. Paul Doyle is going to be upset with me now, and that's never a good place to be. Guys, I certainly hope you received as much value from Bryan's interview as I did. Found it extremely interesting to hear about the things that he had to learn when he moved over into the business world, but also that aspect of being a CEO of your own business when you are the track and field coach, specifically as a head coach, when he was talking about budgets and staff and hosting meets and things like that. So that was really enlightening. Hey, if you've made it this far, just want to say thanks for joining us. Your time and attention are super valuable, and we certainly don't take that lightly. We appreciate that you decided to spend some of that time with us today. Want to know when future episodes of the podcast are available? The best way is to subscribe to the podcast in the app you are listening to right now. In the meantime, if this episode of the Gale Athletics Connections podcast provided you value, would you consider sharing it to your network? This way, you can provide others with the same value you received. That's it for today, folks. Can't wait to join you next time for another episode of the Gale Athletics Connections podcast.